Our last session before we go to breakouts is Ricardo, and this is the PPG case study. So again, another great case study. Thank you very much for coming to present this. So Ricardo.
I am wondering, and I'm going to question you, how many of you think that saying that we are working in a VUCA environment is a clear understatement? Yeah. As I tell my team is, forget about VUCA. We are no longer in the VUCA statement. We are playing Jumanji. Okay? Are you aware what is Jumanji? Nobody? It's a movie where somebody rolls the dice and something bad happens. An animal, a stampede, everybody is trying just to survive. So that's what we are doing right now. No? Since the pandemic, it seems that somebody will roll the dice and then we will have Texas freeze. Right? All the oil industry in the States going to stop, and all force majeures. Okay, somebody rolls the dice, and a ship blocks the canal. This year we have a drought in the Panama Canal, so we have to reduce the level of ships that were crossing the level. And in all these cases, for the last 2 years, I have seen more force majeure announcements of my suppliers than in my previous 20 years. It's just unbelievable. And in each one of these cases, our team is just running for their life, right? We serve the automotive industry, and as you know, you cannot fail in the automotive industry. The price of failure in the automotive industry is huge. When you stop up an automotive line, you're talking about of hundreds of thousands of US dollars per hour. So failure is not an option for us. I'm going to tell you the story of how we at PPG in Latin America, we are not just playing Jumanji to survive. We are playing Jumanji to thrive. So I'm going to introduce a little bit my company. My company is one of the largest coatings company in the world. As we said in PPG, if you see it, we paint it. If you don't see it, we also paint it. Okay? Or what is the same? If it moves, we paint it. If it doesn't move, we also paint it. Okay? So we are everywhere you turn around, probably you're seeing one of our products. We protect all the assets. Our mission is to protect and beautify the world, okay? Your most precious assets, we protect. The things that you dear, even if it's your home, your car, an airplane where you're flying, the oil rig, we are there and we protect that. We are a Fortune 500 company. We have more than 50,000 employees around the world. We invoice around $80 billion. US billion dollars, because I know the US, so $18,000 million a year. And we are proud of a heritage of 140 years of history, now growing on that part. We grew and we have transformed ourselves over the last years. Over the last 10 years, we started as actually a glass company. That's what PPG was, Pittsburgh Plate Glass, to really the coatings leader in the world. It is March 2021, okay? 2 years had passed since I was named general manager for Central America, running our architectural PMC business there. But it also had passed, 8 months had passed since the Panamanian government had recruited me in my home. I was not able to get out of my home. I only can live 2 days a week, 1 hour, depending on the time. You need to show your passport to the police to tell them that you were going to buy grocery at that time. So at that point, I received a call of my boss, some of my bosses, and tell me, hey, Ricardo, it doesn't make sense. You stay in Panama, okay? By the way, we need some help. Please come back to Mexico and take over Latin America supply chain. So I go to my wife, I tell her, hey, we're going back to home, because I left after 10 years outside of Mexico. I was sent to Asia, to Colombia, to Panama, always trying to fix and turn around some situation there. I was coming back home. And I told my wife, hey, we're going back home. And the best part, I'm going to take over supply chain. Yeah, over the last years in PPG, they have moved and they implemented Oracle. So I probably going to have a relaxed time. I'm going to be able to relax, okay? So talk about naiveness. Huh? That was me, the optimistic, eternal optimist. So I go back to Mexico, and this is what I found. You can imagine that the yellow line is whatever KPI you want. Put whatever you want. OTIF, inventory, obsolescence, or probably the most important one for me is people behavior and performance. We were the highest turnover function in the organization. I don't know why. It's not stressful. Okay? And we were playing. But you can say we were also having the lowest engagement level in the supply chain organization. We measure in PPG every year. We do a Gallup survey where we measure ourselves against the whole industry in terms of engagement. And we were really, really low in the percentiles. So at that time, after going, what you can see is that we moved from a legacy system. We were moving from, when I left, we were running on what I call the Excel imperium, right? Everything was happening in Excel. Everybody was running. So we went to an ERP system. And of course, when you make a change, it's part of the theory of changes. You have a drop in performance. There's always a drop in performance. Whoever is not aware of that has a problem, right? Because then you start changing because you want to improve. So we have the drop of performance expected, and we were just coming back to our base level of performance when the pandemic hit. And woo, that was a drop in performance significantly. So when I come here, we're in the middle of this crisis with a very low performance, and I realized that, we need to do something different. Because otherwise, the only thing we're going to achieve is to come back again to our base level of performance. And for me, that's never acceptable. I like to do step changes, right? That's why they sent me all around the world, really to make a difference, a big difference there. So I realized we need to do something different, and we want to change. So I started to understand, trying to define how it would look like, what is motivating us, and what should be the motivator for us to do this change. So we start talking about, well, of course, we want to really, really improve our performance, okay? That's the level. But we want really to have a strong team, a motivated team that can deliver on that performance, okay? So we really needed to strengthen that team. And in order for them to help them, we need to improve our planning process. We give them tools, give them the knowledge on how to do that so that we can really achieve our goals, our targets that we were aiming for. Of course, excellence is kind of the name of the game. Execution is really the key part. So, okay, we have the motivations. Let's start bringing the resources and the team that we needed. I knew that we needed some support. There was no expertise within the organization kind of to drive. So we looked for partners. We worked very closely with SAPIX. We started working with them for training. I brought from them, and I sent all my team for all the training of APIX. And it was during these trainings, I was also attending to those trainings too, because although I have managed operations and supply in the past, I'm not really a professional. So I understood that I needed to go really deeper into the knowledge of supply chain. And during this training, I was introduced to DDMRP. And then I have this aha moment, right? When something really makes a click and say like, whoa, this really makes sense. This is what I have managed all the functions in the organization, and this was the one thing that really made me feel how that everything was getting together so that we can improve what we have been doing over the last years. Okay, so we put a team. You already hear almost everything. We have this definition, the organization, the structure, the role definition, so we can start working. And then we start our journey. But how do you eat the elephant, okay? As you say, we are a mammoth. An 148 years old mammoth, very difficult to move. So we wanted to eat the elephant piece by piece. So what I decided is we're going to start with what's under my control. So we will talk about, I am the supply chain for the industrial segment in Latin America. We're going to start with the sites and the segment of the industrial segment. So we decided we were going to start implementing the DDMRP in our 5 key sites. We call them sites, not factories, because each site in Latin America is a multi-factory point. So we will start on these sites and start working also on the distribution centers. We are normally in the industrial segment, we are a B2B business. We also have our B2C segment, but that is managed different. So we wanted to start in this. Now we have the focus. We knew where we were going to start. So how do we convince the organization that we need to go through this journey. Okay, we think a little bit about the tricky stoppage factors for change. We talk about people, the processes, the practices and technology that we're going to be needing here. And something was very clear for us from the beginning. I guess that one of the toughest things that we needed to do, it was going to be to deliver the message and convince the people that we needed to change. Why do we need to change? Okay, what happens because we are not changing, and what could be what happens if we really take this journey and start changing? The other part, of course, was, and every one of you have talked about this, was data, right? The integrity of data. What I found is, at this point, is like, we implemented our very expensive ERP, okay? But the truth is, it was being used mostly for finance and transaction recording. It was never used really to be doing all the planning because nobody trusted the information that was there. So after several millions of dollars spent on an implementation of ERP, I still find my team working in an Excel imperium. So everybody had their own set of data, their own truth, and of course there were conflicts all around. So it was immediately that we needed to really start aligning and bring everything to a single source of truth for all the organization. So that was kind of one of the biggest changes and challenges that we face, to let the people leave their Excel, go to one single set of data, and start working on that. So how do you sell it? So we decided we were going to have really not only a DDMRP project. I really wanted to revamp the whole system, an integral project that helped us to really have not only the tools, because in past experience, I know that if when you never bring the tool, but you don't have all the rest to support these changes, it just falls apart. As soon as you turn around and you go to the next assignment, it will fall. So we wanted to go through all the process. So we did all the work. We did the geo-mapping, the value strip mapping. Something that was very powerful was the current reality tree and the constraints that we have. That was kind of an eye-opener. When you start putting this tool and you start seeing all those reds and all those conflicts and try to define how you can start really solving it, that was really, really what bring us forward to the definition of the portfolio that we wanted to be implementing. So these are just very quick examples of the work we did. As I said, we have a very complex supply chain. We receive materials from all around the world. We have our fair share coming from Asia. In Latin America, we have very few production of raw materials. It is unbelievable. So we are the region for all the company that really imports the most, has the longest lead times. Okay, so we import from Europe, we import from Asia, we import from the US, and we import even move materials across Latin America, which is not the most efficient system. So we did all that. We start mapping. We try to understand how our customers were defined. So we started in Mexico, which was our highest priority. Mexico represents around probably 60 to 70% of our business in Latin America, okay, and an important source of growth. Mexico is today the second most important country for my company in the world. We overtook China 2 years ago. Of course, China has been in a downturn and they're coming back. We're trying to stay ahead. So Mexico was the highest priority for us in the region. And by the way, since we started this project, our lead times had not been reduced, and I'm talking about our supply lead time. So we move with all the constraints, the port congestions, all that we talk about the Suez Canal. Lead times, our suppliers saying they are in force majeure. Our lead times had gone from an average of 30 to 60 days to now an average of 90 to up to 150 days. So our suppliers told us, hey, now it's 120 days, do it what you want. So this was representing a real challenge for us, right? Because we measure ourselves with a thing that is called inventory health. It's important, which is which percentage of our inventory has been sitting in your inventory for more than 90 days. Our target is to have at least 4 turns per year. So you can imagine that when you have lead times of 120, 150 days, that's challenging, right? That's an important metric. Then we went through the threat diagrams. You all know this stuff. You have been listening about this for the last 2 days. Map the processes, understand the inventory's positions, how we serve our customers, and we continue working just to understand what we needed to do. So with all this analysis, we came up with our portfolio, what we wanted to be growing. And by this time, we were convinced that we wanted to go through to DDMRP. But we knew that we need to talk and fix other things so that this will be possible. And we are talking again, data integrity, or not only integrity of the data, but recording. I heard some cases where they cannot trust that the recordings of the movement of the inventory were there. So we really have this opportunity, inventory accuracy, forecasting, even working with our teams to improve forecasting. And this, I don't know if you have suffered this the same, but it's a hard speech to tell our sales team that tell you, I'm not going to use your forecast to build, but I still need a good forecast. So it's well, what? Yeah, I'm going to use your forecast to create and define my buffer, but I'm not going to be building upon your forecast. So I still need you to work with your forecast, okay? So it's kind of counterintuitive on most of the processes like that, but we understand that this needed to be done. So, okay, we have the plan, we have the understanding. Now, how do we sell it, right? Because we need some resources and we need commitment from this journey. So, as most of you did, we took one of our plants in Mexico, on the side of Mexico, our smaller plant, but not the less complex, because the programming of this type of plant is complex. And we said, let's run a very quick analysis, put it on Excel, bring the data, and let's see what in our smallest plant is the opportunity for improvement if we do it. After doing all this analysis, well, this is what we got. We had a chance to reduce, at least the theory said that we will be able to reduce 23% our inventory of raw materials and more than 32% our inventory of finished goods. So that's a very powerful tool to go and make a business case, okay? If I can do this in my smallest plant, imagine what's going to be the impact if I can do it across the site and across the region. So this work out, we have these discussions. We are, as I said, a big boat, and turning around a big boat is not easy. It takes time. So we needed just to start letting us steer a little bit the wheel so that we can start moving that. I went, and as Carol said, it's amazing because this came from the US, but the US is probably the most reactive to do this, but we convince them. We normally in Latin America end up doing what we think is correct and then show that it is correct. So then we went to the next step. We have already trained all our team, but that was not enough. We really needed to train the rest of the organization so that they understand what we want to do. Okay, so we went through the 3D bricks, not only our team, but now we bring manufacturing, we bring sales, we bring other functions that we can start really talking the same language across the organization, and everybody could be aligned and understand, or at least try to understand what we were trying to achieve, okay? So we went through this, and by this time we also have choose V2Y as our partner of options. We were really impressed with the capabilities of the system, the friendliness. So, and they have been delivering us the training across. So we just start our journey with them. This is things that all of you know. Then we define where we're going to be putting our buffers, our drums, and try to see how we can improve performance. And then with that, we make a commitment. We went back to our management and we make these commitments. We told them that we were going to be working and we will be delivering in reduced inventory levels. We told them, as I said, we are in the automotive industry and we had a lot of issues, but we never failed our customers because that's very expensive. But we were really delivering this service to a very high expense for the company. And I'm talking about expedites, freight, air freights, because believe it or not, we are capable to freight an airplane just to avoid stopping one line and fly one pail just to make sure that you don't hit one of our largest lines. So air freights, expedites. Mexico has doubled or grown double over the last 10 years, and we haven't increased our warehouse space since there for raw materials. So we were paying also the mortgages because we will bring the raw material that we needed and we'll be sitting in a box next door, and that is very expensive. We were paying the mortgages, so we really need to improve the cost. Of course, we wanted to reduce the lead times to our customers, and this was challenging when your supply is everybody is increasing your lead times to supply you, have a commitment to reduce the lead times to your customer, and of course, start improving level of services, okay? Because automotive, we don't measure even to OTIF, we measure against some stock level. So we consider an urgency if we go below 5 days of coverage. So for us, it's like red alert, go and do whatever. You never go to that. But even at that, for other businesses, we were still failing and falling short of their expectations from us. So, and we wanted this to be consistent. So, as I said, we really needed the right enabler, the right partners. We work with B2Ys. They help us to start understanding how we were going to be connecting, and I'm not an IT expert, so I'm not going to be very, very close to this, but how we're going to be collecting the data, connecting, configuring, and then just following up through. We wanted it to be a cloud-based functionality. We are migrating in the future to SAP. We want it to be something that we can take now and then we migrate whenever the time comes from us to move to SAP. This is a global. PPG is very complex. We grew through acquisitions. We have around the world 50 plus ERPs that they don't talk to each other, so you can imagine the level of complexity. So we know S4 is coming, and we wanted something that eventually we can take it, just plug in and move and learn. So we were working with B2Ys and making this change. And this is what we achieved. So just to remember you, we said we were going to reduce inventory, okay? That we were going to do it in the right way, no? In the right way, because everybody can reduce inventory, right? We are a public company, and if you want to hit your number on the end of the quarter or on the end of the year, you can always make the wise decision of reducing your moving inventory, right? And then you're struggling and rushing to just avoid stopping, but you hit the number. So we really were committed at doing the right thing for the business, for our customers. So reducing inventory, reduce cost of freight, improve service, and do it in a consistent way. So that was our commitment, and this is what we achieved. So our OTIF moved from 93 to 95%, and let me give you, and this is on average. What I tell on average, because this includes all our imported finished goods that we deliver to, that I have told you that we already moved from probably 60 to 90 to 120 days. That part, we move it from 89% to around 92%, which was a significant. And for what we produce in Mexico now, we move from a 95% that we used to have to over 99% on a consistent basis. So on average, we move it to 95% for all our businesses. Understanding that sometimes OTIF is not against the order of the customer, but against our target inventory in an automotive plant, okay? It's our own safety. Then we just used to be running and having delays because we never had the right raw material. So we measure our raw material service, which is how many times do I have to delay a batch just because I don't have the right raw material at hand. So we were able to improve that from a 70% to up to the 90%. So now, I remember whenever we were having a discussion on the level of services, it was like the typical answer was, well, we're late because we didn't have raw material, okay? We're late because we didn't have raw material, okay? Well, that's not the case. So for me, one of the greatest success was when in a meeting someone was selling was, hey, are you delivering because you don't have raw materials? And the manufacturing director says, like, no. We no longer have issues with raw materials. This is on us, and we need to be working on some other stuff that we need to be working. So that was kind of, wow, we did it, okay? We took out this mantra about everything was a problem, a supply chain problem. We improve, of course, our days of inventory because we have a significant reduction in inventory, but of the bad inventory, okay? And that has been the result, and you can see it by our inventory health numbers. So we reduced our age inventory on more than 30%. So, and as a result, we also improve our obsolescence, which was huge because we have many products that have a very short shelf life, okay? We have some products that have 3 months shelf life, and the customer stops because something happened in the market. As I told you, Jumanji, there were not microprocessors for the cars. So we have a dip in the production of the cars, and we have technologies there sitting for months because we used to have huge inventories for them that after 3 months were not worth it. So we have been reducing our obsolescence. And probably the one KPI I am the most proud of, and I really will not forget myself of having put it there here, is the results of our people, okay? We passed from being the highest turnover function in PPG in Latin America to the lowest turnover function. And we passed from being on the lowest percentile on the engagement score to the top percentile. So today, my organization is over the 90% engagement rate, and we are one of the best ranked teams in terms of performance. So this is just an example, and this is how you see the inventory. These are 2 different planners in Mexico, where I was able to go back and take their inventories and see, because when we first make this analysis, we were the case model of the dual distribution of the inventory. It was horrible. It was all blue or all red and nothing in green. So these are actual examples taken from the system of where we are, and some comments of our planners, of our people talking about how the system works, how it requires commitment to work, and how this has helped them to really have a much better way to work. And with that, I want to share with you some of the lessons learned. I mean, are the same that you have been hearing, I guess, for most of the presentations today. I just want to emphasize the part of resistance to change, and I think you all have heard about that. But I want to share you this story because all this project almost went to stray because of this resistance to change and the fact that we were trusting that things were happening. So for this to work, everybody needs to be aligned and everybody needs to be working with the same part. At some point during the first implementation, I thought we had everybody aligned, but it sounds like part of my team was not. They were telling that they were doing it, and they were not. So we used to have production orders for more than 80 days, so that the people who buy raw materials could see what was coming and will be buying, because with 90 days. So at some point I tell, okay, no more 80 days. I'm going to be good with you, and we're going to start having only 2 weeks, and then the goal is that we go to 5 days so that you can just plan. And everybody was agreed, but of course the guys who were buying raw materials continue using their Excel files, and they were not seeing demand, so they didn't buy materials, okay? And with lead times, as long as we have by the time we noticed, it was like, well, we were in real crisis. We spent a lot of money to keep running. So that could have killed completely the initiative. We came out, we learned. Sometimes, as you said, you have to draw a line and start, or you do it, or you can find a place where you want to be better. And then we pull it ahead. So now we're very successful. I guess the most rewarding part is that just before coming here, my boss called me from the US, and this is good news. He's like, hey, Ricardo, we really need you to come and start bringing this. We need to start working on this in the United States. Okay, so I was like, I finally start turning the boat. It's great news. So I'm going to leave you with this question, okay? How are you playing your Jumanji? Okay? We are playing not to survive, to thrive. What are you doing with it? Okay, thank you very much.